Much of what I want you to know about when it comes to gender issues is in the slides. We're going to give you a number of these slides, but I do want to highlight some of the particular points that I think are really important here for you to be aware of, because the orientation of men and the orientation of women when they're growing up is quite different, actually. Women, again, are constantly trying to bring about, they're constantly moving toward a relationship with one another. As a result, so much of what they say and how they say it is based on that, as opposed to a man's world where so much of what he is trying to do is establish more of a sense of hierarchy for himself, much more of a one-up position. Being in the one-up position for a woman is not necessarily a positive thing. And it becomes, this is something, by the way, in a lot of my coaching now, because I'm hearing this over and over again still, so I know this is still very prominent. One talent, the strengths finders that we talk about, is command. That is a talent where someone is very much willing to step up, take control of a situation, take leadership, is not afraid of conflict, is more than happy to take that on too, and whatnot. When I coach women who have command, over and over again, I hear them say that this is very problematic for them, and this is current, this is not in the past. They will say over and over again that that is very, very difficult for them to exercise that particular talent. And they get equal amounts of negative feedback from men and from women, because it's not been classically something where a woman would accept the one-up position, as opposed to men who very much are trying to avoid the one-down position and want very much to be in the one-up position, which is the competent position, which is the position where they are giving advice, not asking for advice. And so many of the jokes that we have, such as men asking for directions or whatnot, all of this comes from this place that men do not like to be in this one-down position. And the person asking for directions is automatically in a one-down position. Men tend not to ask for evaluations on their performance as much as women do, because again, when I say, how am I doing? Am I performing appropriately? It's taking the one-down position. So it's very, very difficult. Now, in the workplace, so many of the metaphors that you hear there are often sports and military metaphors, which women are usually less adept at using, such as stick to your guns, the ball's in your court, calling the shots, it's an uphill battle, he's in left field. All those kinds of things, again, tend to move much more into a man's perspective on things. So women in the work environment often are at disadvantage, if you will. Men, by the way, tend to ask fewer personal questions. They tend to feel that that's meddling and will not go there, as opposed to a woman who will, when they hear personal questions being asked, they hear that as a sign of caring. So you can see now the differences in the way the man and the women interact. Another one, though, that's very important to realize, and that is certainty and doubt. Men tend to be much more reluctant to express doubt. Conversely, women tend to be much more reticent to express certainty. So you have in a work setting often a man coming across very certain, even when they're not, which looks much more like the qualities that we associate with leadership and advancement in your position. Women tend to come across much more uncertain. A position, by the way, that men really, again, move away from. Apology. Women will often say, "I'm sorry." Such as if you say, gee, I coming into work today, I had a flat tire, women will tend to say, well, gosh, I'm sorry. They're not accepting blame for it, obviously, but they're just expressing care in that. Men tend not to so much, because when a man says, I'm sorry, he sees that much more as an acceptance of responsibility in the situation. So a man tends not to say that. Humor, men and women's humor tends to be very, very different in a lot of ways. Men like the razzing and the teasing and the mocking and that kind of thing. Women will self-mock, which a man doesn't tend to do, because again, that's taking a one-down position. And both men and women, if you notice, tend to mock the other gender's form of humor. Women don't tend to understand men's humor. Men don't tend to understand women's humor. And boasting, again. Men will much more often boast and feel okay about that, and that's not seen as a bad thing. A woman boasting is seen as a very bad thing in many ways, and it's very poor form for a woman to express boasting. I say all this to say that one of those unconscious things that's constantly going on around you is these gender differences. Now, when it comes to husbands and wives, it becomes much more prominent in that arena. Men, by the way, this doesn't have to just do with husbands and wives, but often when a woman expresses a problem that she is having, another woman would probably take a sympathetic position with her and maybe ask for more verbiage about that. A man, on the other hand, will start giving advice, which usually ticks the woman off, because she's not looking for advice, she's looking for someone to come alongside of. Women, by the way, often use conversation and will use small talk to maintain connectedness with the other person. Men tend to use language much more as a tool, in a utilitarian way. And this is where husbands and wives in particular get into a lot of trouble. The woman will just want to stay connected to her husband, so she'll do a lot of small talk, and the man will be saying, what's the point of all this? Well, the point is to stay connected, but men don't do it that way. The man is constantly, in listening to the verbiage, is thinking over and over again, let's say, okay, am I supposed to do something about this? And if so, what should I do about this? Anyway, for your coachees, especially, I'm not sure if you'll do cross-gender coaching, but you certainly want to be aware of that. I've coached women and I've coached men for years, actually, and it is a very, very different kind of a language exchange, if you will. If you have if I have a man in front of me, and how he and I will dialogue with each other, as opposed to if I have a woman in front of me, and how she and I will dialogue over things, and how I'm listening for her to be languaging things. Also, and be aware of this. Now, I know that there's controversy in the church about women's leadership and ordination and those kinds of things. Certainly, if you have a woman who is in a leadership position, in some ways, even more than the secular world, some of these differences are going to be magnified. Her trying to establish her authority, but how do you actually do that? In some ways, she's going to be conflicted internally with that, as much as she is with the people around her, and the whole sense of assuming authority and using that authority in an appropriate and effective way could be very much a difficulty for her in going forward. So keep these in mind, these gender ones. In the next part here, we're going to talk about some of the generational issues that you need to be aware of.